A homeless man found a dying bull and decided to help it. What happened next stunned the entire town. What happens next will leave you speechless. The bull's labored breathing broke through the morning fog like the rasp of a bellows. Eli Ward froze in the middle of the dirt road, heart pounding, staring at the dark mass sprawled in the ditch. Steam rose from the animal's body in slow, trembling wisps, and its massive flank shuddered with every uneven breath. Blood streaked the frosted grass in a jagged trail. He climbed down the embankment, boots crunching on the frozen ground. The bull lifted its head weakly, eyes dull but not yet defeated. A low, guttural sound rolled from its throat, more plea than threat. "Easy, easy now," Eli murmured, his voice low and steady. He kept his hands visible, fingers open, as if speaking to a wounded friend. His father had taught him long ago never to approach cattle too fast, never to let fear seep into his voice. Even now, after years of wandering from one abandoned place to another, those lessons clung to him like old scars. The bull shifted, revealing deep, clean gashes along its right flank, too straight to be the work of barbed wire or horns. Eli's stomach tightened. "What did they do to you?" he whispered. As he crouched beside the animal, something metallic caught his eye. A dull silver tag pierced through the hide near the ear, stamped with 3 bold letters, RHC. Eli didn't recognize it, but the mark looked too deliberate to be a rancher's brand. He touched it briefly, then tore a strip from his own coat to press against the bleeding wounds. The cold air bit at his skin, but he barely felt it. Up on the road, faint tire tracks curved sharply off the gravel shoulder, as though a truck had backed close to the ditch and left in a hurry. Eli scanned the empty horizon, mist hanging low over the barren fields. Nothing moved, yet the hair on the back of his neck prickled. "You didn't crawl here," Eli muttered. "Someone put you here." The bull's sides heaved in a slow rhythm, eyes fixed on him as if weighing his worth. Against all reason, Eli felt the weight of that gaze pressing down on him. It wasn't just an animal struggling for life. It was something else, something that refused to surrender. He glanced around. He had no food, no medicine, nowhere to take this creature. Just the empty shell of a railway depot where he slept, miles back in town, and a half-collapsed barn at the edge of the fields. Neither place was safe, but the barn was closer. "All right," Eli sighed, voice firming with resolve. "I'm not leaving you here." He tugged at the bull's halter, coaxing it with quiet words and steady hands. The beast staggered upright, trembling violently. It took 3 painful steps, then another, leaning into Eli as though trusting him entirely. They moved slowly down the road, Eli guiding, supporting, whispering encouragement with every breath of mist that left his lips. A mile away, hidden behind the skeletal branches of a windbreak, a man in a gray truck lowered a pair of binoculars. Jonas Cale's face was calm, expressionless, yet his eyes glinted with sharp calculation. He tapped his thumb against the steering wheel twice, then pulled out his phone. "He found it," Jonas said flatly. He didn't wait for a response, just ended the call and watched Eli disappear into the fog with the limping bull. By the time Eli reached the abandoned barn, sweat chilled his back beneath the threadbare coat. The wooden doors groaned open, hinges screaming in protest. Inside, shafts of pale light filtered through gaps in the roof, falling across mounds of rotting hay. The bull collapsed onto the dirt floor, sides heaving. Eli knelt beside it, pressing another strip of cloth into the wound. His breath came hard, white in the cold air. "You're tougher than you look," he said softly, almost admiringly. He worked until his fingers ached, wiping blood, clearing away crusted dirt, whispering nonsense words meant only to soothe. The bull lay still but not lifeless, its eyes never leaving him. Something about that unbroken stare unsettled Eli more than the wounds themselves. Distantly, a door slammed. Eli stiffened, listening. Only wind. Then, footsteps? He waited, holding his breath, but the sound faded. Shaking his head, he forced himself back to the task. Probably just his imagination. Night fell faster than he expected. Through the cracks in the barn wall, Eli saw the first stars prick the black sky. He settled against a bale of hay, exhausted, when a new sound cut through the silence. A faint crunch of gravel outside, then nothing. He sat up, muscles tight. "Who's there?" he called sharply. His voice echoed in the emptiness. No answer. The bull stirred, breathing louder, as if sensing what Eli couldn't see. Eli rose and stepped toward the barn doors, heart thudding. Outside, the night was a curtain of mist. He scanned the field, nothing but darkness, and the faint outline of trees swaying in the wind. "Just the wind," he muttered, though his own words didn't convince him. When he returned to the bull, its eyes were still on him, unblinking. That same strange weight pressed into him again, as though the creature understood everything that had happened, and everything yet to come. Later, as Eli dozed fitfully against the wall, he woke to the faintest sound, a low whisper, carried on the night air. Then another, closer, too soft to make out. He crept to the door, listening, but whoever, or whatever it was, had already melted into the darkness. By morning, word had spread through Ridgeton. A couple of truckers passing before dawn claimed they'd seen the depot drifter walking a half-dead bull down the road. At the gas station, men chuckled about Eli finally losing his mind. In a town like Ridgeton, where every stranger was suspect and every misstep remembered, Eli Ward's strange rescue would be the talk of the day. None of them knew about the man in the gray truck who had parked again at the edge of town, eyes hidden behind dark glasses, watching the barn. Jonas Cale drummed his fingers against the wheel, lips curling in a faint smile as he whispered to himself, "This just got interesting." By the time the sun dipped low again, Eli had tended the bull's wounds as best as he could. The creature refused to lie still, trying to rise despite the pain, staring at him with that same unnerving steadiness. It was as if the bull knew something Eli didn't, something coming, something close. And when darkness crept over the fields, Eli heard them again. The footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, circling the barn like a predator testing its prey. He gripped a broken pitchfork, pulse hammering, whispering to himself, "Not tonight. I'm not letting you die out here." The bull didn't flinch, didn't blink. It only stared, breathing slow and steady, as if bracing for what was coming. Yet the barn doors never opened. The footsteps faded into silence. And far out by the tree line, Jonas Cale's truck idled briefly before rolling away, its taillights swallowed by mist. The townsfolk might have whispered that Eli had finally gone mad. But the bull, despite its injuries, showed an eerie resilience. It refused to fall, staring at Eli as if it understood something he didn't. The first thing Eli noticed was the way the bull trembled. Not with pain, he had seen that before, but with fear. Its massive shoulders quivered as if sensing danger long before Eli could. "Easy, boy," Eli whispered, crouching low in the straw. The barn smelled of damp hay and blood. He ran a hand along the bull's flank, feeling the warmth of its breath against his sleeve. Then he saw it. Thin darts scattered across the hay near the door, metallic shafts glinting faintly in the dim light. The wooden door itself hung askew on one hinge, deep claw-like slashes torn into it, not from an animal, but from a blade. Someone had been here while he slept. The footsteps in the night, the circling engines, they weren't tricks of his imagination. He scanned the barn, pulse racing, every creak of the wind through the rafters sharpening his nerves. Whoever wanted this bull had just declared war. By mid-morning, word about the crazy drifter was echoing across Ridgeton. Eli overheard it when he stopped at the feed store for scraps of burlap, men leaning against dusty trucks, laughing under their breath. "He's talking to that bull like it's his brother," one man said. "Maybe the cold finally cracked him." Eli kept walking, shoulders stiff, unwilling to answer. Later that day, a tall man in a wool coat appeared at the barn, his breath fogging in the crisp air. "Name's Marcus Thorne," he said, adjusting his cap as he stepped inside. His lined face showed curiosity rather than judgment. "Used to be a vet. Heard there's an animal here worth looking at." Eli hesitated, eyeing the stranger. But Marcus knelt without fear beside the bull, running practiced hands over the wounds. His brow furrowed. "These cuts, too clean, too precise. This isn't barbed wire or a goring. Someone did this with a steady hand." Eli crouched nearby, gripping his knees. "Why? What do they want with it?" Marcus brushed straw off his coat and shook his head. "See this tag?" He tapped the metal clip to the bull's ear. "RHC, Rydell Harvest Consortium. They're not some family farm. They're a corporation with deep pockets and no patience for questions." His voice lowered. "If this bull escaped something they're working on, you're in more trouble than you know." "Then I'll keep it alive," Eli said firmly. "No one's taking it back." Marcus straightened slowly, regarding Eli with a look caught between respect and concern. "You're stubborn. But listen to me. Men like this don't knock on doors. They break them down." He left Eli with a warning and a torn scrap of paper bearing his phone number, just in case. That evening, miles away, Jonas Cale leaned against a black sedan parked on a dirt road. Two men in dark suits stood nearby, their breath white in the cold. Jonas spoke in clipped sentences, his voice void of emotion. "The drifter's protecting it. He's stubborn. If anyone finds out what Rydell's been doing, we all pay for it." One of the suited men narrowed his eyes. "And the animal?" Jonas glanced toward the distant glow of Ridgeton. "We recover it. Tonight, if possible. Quietly." Back at the barn, the quiet was already gone. Engines growled faintly beyond the tree line, too far to see but close enough to hear. Eli didn't sleep. He sat on a hay bale, gripping a rusted pitchfork, waiting for headlights that never came. At dawn, he found the door slashed open and the bull trembling violently, its nostrils flaring. The darts on the ground weren't lethal, not yet, but they were meant to track. Someone knew exactly where the animal was now. Eli moved fast. He couldn't do this alone. He walked into town, past whispering faces, until he reached a low cinder-block garage smelling of oil and gasoline. Tate Rivers, a wiry young mechanic with a crooked grin, looked up from beneath the hood of an old truck. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Tate said, wiping his hands. "Not a ghost. Trouble," Eli replied. "I need a truck. Yours." Tate raised an eyebrow. "What for?" Eli hesitated, then told him everything. The wounded bull, the strange men, the slashed barn door. Tate listened, eyes narrowing, then tossed Eli the keys to an old flatbed. "If these guys are half as bad as you say, we better move fast." Together they loaded the bull, covering it with burlap and rope to keep it steady. The animal groaned but didn't resist, as though trusting Eli completely. Tate drove while Eli kept watch through the cracked rear window. The road out of town was empty at first, lined by frost-tipped pines and fields fading into mist. Then headlights appeared in the mirror. One car, then another, both closing in. "They're following us," Eli said, voice tight. "No kidding," Tate muttered, pressing the accelerator. The truck rattled, engine protesting, but gained speed. The headlights behind them swerved, staying locked on their bumper. "Take the old quarry road," Eli shouted, gripping the seat as Tate spun the wheel. Gravel sprayed from the tires. The bull shifted in the bed with a deep, frightened bellow. Behind them, the pursuing vehicles tightened formation. A dark SUV pulled alongside, window sliding down just enough to reveal a gloved hand signaling to slow down. Tate ignored it, pushing the truck harder. Then a second vehicle blocked the road ahead, forming a trap. "Hold on!" Tate yelled. He cranked the wheel sharply, the truck skidding off the road and plunging down a shallow ravine. Metal screamed as they bounced over rocks and brush. The pursuers swerved, unable to follow without flipping. The truck finally slammed to a stop at the bottom of the slope. Eli leapt out, checking the bull, shaken, but alive. Tate cursed under his breath, examining a bent axle. "We're not driving out of here," he said grimly. Boots crunched on gravel above them. Shadows moved against the setting sun. One of the masked men climbed down the embankment, slow and deliberate, a pistol holstered at his hip. He pulled off his mask, revealing sharp features, neatly combed hair, and an unsettling calm. Jonas Cale smiled faintly. "You've got courage, I'll give you that," he said, voice almost friendly. "But courage won't keep you alive." Eli stepped between Jonas and the bull, fists clenched. "You're not taking it." Jonas's smile never faltered. "You don't understand. That animal isn't yours. And if you don't hand it over, both of you will disappear without a trace." The barn door swung open into silence. Eli froze in the threshold, breath fogging in the night air. The space smelled wrong, cold metal and oil instead of straw and earth. The stall stood empty. Chains that once held the gate were torn loose, links bent and flecked with fresh blood. Tire marks crisscrossed the dirt outside, heavy treads that cut deep into the ground. The bull was gone. Eli's fists clenched at his sides. He had expected threats, even another break-in, but not this. Not the animal vanishing under his watch. Tate arrived minutes later, skidding to a stop in his dented truck. "Where is it?" he demanded, voice shaking. "Taken," Eli muttered. His jaw worked as though he were chewing anger itself. "They didn't just scare me off. They came for it." Marcus Thorne appeared soon after, summoned by Eli's terse call. The older man crouched to examine the ground. "3 vehicles, maybe 4, Marcus said quietly. His lined face looked grim in the moonlight. This wasn't a snatch and run. They knew exactly what they were doing. Eli's breath came hard and fast. He had spent days gathering proof with Marcus's help. Photographs of the clean surgical wounds, samples of the bull's blood showing a strange resistance to infection. He believed if they took everything to the press, Rydell wouldn't dare touch them. But now the bull itself, the living evidence, was in enemy hands. "They'll bury it," Tate said bitterly, kicking at the dirt. "Whatever they're doing, they'll finish it and cover their tracks." "Not if I find it first," Eli growled. He followed the tracks out of town, headlights off to avoid detection. The trail led past silent farms to an isolated feed plant on Ridgeton's edge, long abandoned, or so it appeared. Rusted gates sagged open, but inside, faint light pulsed behind grimy windows. Eli parked in the shadows. Tate stayed behind the wheel, scanning the road nervously. "I'll keep watch," he said, voice low. "But if you're not back in 20 minutes, I'm coming in after you." Eli slipped through a side door, the hinges whining in protest. The interior smelled of chemicals and disinfectant, nothing like feed or grain. He crept down a corridor where fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Faint voices echoed from deeper inside. He reached a wide room that looked more like a laboratory than a plant. The bull lay strapped to a steel table under glaring white lamps, its massive chest rising and falling in labored breaths. Men in lab coats worked quickly, injecting a pale serum into its veins. Stainless steel trays held syringes and glass vials. Wires and monitors tracked the animal's vital signs. Eli's stomach turned. They weren't just harming it, they were experimenting on it. "Step away from that gate," a cold voice said from behind him. Jonas Kale emerged from the shadows, hands in his coat pockets, calm as ever. "I told you to walk away," Jonas said evenly. "You didn't listen." Eli turned, anger blazing in his eyes. "What are you doing to it?" Jonas glanced at the bull without emotion. "Improving it. This animal's blood can save Rydell millions. Livestock plagues cost us a fortune every year. With the right adjustments, that ends. No more loss, no more uncertainty." He stepped closer, voice dropping to a cutting whisper. "It's just an animal." Eli shook his head slowly. "Number. It's more than that. You're cutting it open to line your pockets." Jonas's expression hardened. "You think you're a hero, but you're a drifter with nothing. Rydell is power, and power doesn't bend to sentiment." As Jonas spoke, Eli's eyes swept the room. Wires ran to a control panel against the wall, dials glowing faintly. A plan formed in his mind, risky, but the only chance. He inched backward, pretending to retreat. Jonas's lips curled into a faint smile, misreading the motion as fear. "Smart man," Jonas said. "Now walk away before you end up strapped to that table too." Eli darted for the panel and yanked the main lever down. Sparks erupted as circuits overloaded. The overhead lights popped in sequence, plunging the room into sudden darkness. Alarms wailed, red emergency strobes flashing wildly. Men shouted in confusion, scrambling to secure the animal. Eli leapt to the table, slashing the leather restraints with a utility knife he'd hidden in his coat. The bull lurched to its feet, staggering but alive, muscles quivering in panic. Jonas cursed in the flickering light, shoving past a scattering of panicked technicians. "Stop him!" Jonas roared. Guards rushed in, but Eli was already moving, guiding the bull toward the exit. The great animal followed blindly, driven by instinct and Eli's steady voice. "Come on, boy, just a little further." Outside, Tate spotted the flashing alarms and gunshots. He gunned the truck forward, smashing through a side gate to reach Eli, but not before one of the guards fired, shattering the truck's windshield and sending glass into Tate's shoulder. He cried out, slamming the brakes. Eli shoved the bull toward open fields as floodlights blazed to life behind them. Sirens wailed. Men shouted orders. Then, deep inside the building, the overloaded circuits finally ignited something volatile. A low rumble grew into a deafening roar as an explosion tore through the plant, flames bursting from every window. The night lit up like day. Eli and Tate barely cleared the fence before the blast wave knocked them flat, heat rolling over their backs. The bull stumbled but stayed upright, snorting in confusion and fear. Tate clutched his bleeding shoulder as Eli hauled him to his feet. "You good to run?" Eli shouted over the noise. "Not far," Tate gasped, teeth gritted. "But I'll try." Together they pushed into the darkness, the bull lumbering beside them. Behind them, the feed plant burned like a torch, sending plumes of smoke into the sky. Sirens drew closer. Authorities, maybe Rydell's own security. But Eli didn't look back. He had what mattered. Marcus found them an hour later, hiding in an old irrigation ditch on the edge of town. He took one look at Tate's shoulder and cursed under his breath. "You need a doctor," Marcus said, ripping his coat into strips to stop the bleeding. "And I need to disappear. Word's already out I helped you. They're painting me as a co-conspirator." Eli wiped soot from his face, his eyes never leaving the bull. The animal stood tall despite its wounds, breathing hard but alive, as if it understood that the fight wasn't over. "They're not stopping now," Marcus warned grimly. Eli nodded, jaw set. "Then neither am I." The bull snorted, stamping the ground, as if echoing his resolve. Flames still glowed faintly on the horizon, and the smell of smoke carried on the wind. Their victory had come at a terrible price, and all three of them knew it. However, the victory came at a price. Tate was injured during the escape, and Marcus's name was leaked to the authorities as a co-conspirator. Eli knew Rydell would not stop hunting them now. But the bull, though scarred, stood tall, as if understanding the fight was far from over. The smoke from the feed plant still hung over Ridgeton when Marcus Thorne stepped out of the county courthouse, his collar turned up against the wind. Reporters shouted questions, flashbulbs flared, but he kept walking, jaw set. "No comment," he said firmly, sliding into his old truck. Inside, his hands trembled. The investigators had pressed him hard, but he'd managed to steer suspicion away from Eli and onto Rydell itself, producing the blood samples and photographs they had gathered before the plant exploded. For now, it was enough to keep him free. Across town, Tate lay in a dim county clinic room, arm strapped in a sling. The antiseptic sting of alcohol filled the air, and the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor in the next room reminded him of how close they'd all come to disaster. When Eli appeared at his bedside, Tate's expression was grim. "Jonas won't let this go," he said, voice hoarse. "He'll come for you. Not with lawyers, not with threats. In person." Eli stood silent for a long moment, staring out the window at the gray clouds gathering over the fields. "Then I'll be ready," he replied quietly. 3 nights later, as the town still buzzed over news reports of the mysterious fire and rumors of corporate wrongdoing, Jonas Cale returned. This time he didn't hide in shadows. He strode openly into Ridgeton, his black coat snapping in the wind, his face a mask of controlled fury. Whispers followed him down Main Street. People sensed something dangerous about a man who looked that calm after a catastrophe. Eli found him waiting at the abandoned rail depot on the edge of town. The old building groaned with the weight of years, windows boarded, pigeons scattering as Eli approached. Jonas stood near the tracks, hands in his pockets, his black sedan idling behind him. "You destroyed years of research," Jonas said, his voice flat but laced with venom. "Do you even understand what you've done?" Eli's boots crunched on gravel as he closed the distance. "I stopped you from torturing a living creature," he answered. "That's all I need to understand." Jonas smiled thinly, though his eyes held no humor. "You think the world cares about one bull? We were curing diseases, preventing plagues. Do you know how much livestock this country loses every year? Millions. You've cost us everything." As Jonas spoke, Eli's hand stayed near his coat pocket, where a small recorder was hidden. He needed more than rumors. He needed Jonas to incriminate himself. "You didn't care about cures," Eli said steadily. "You cared about control. You dumped injured animals in fields to hide your failures, didn't you?" Jonas stepped closer, breath steaming in the cold night air. "And I'd do it again," he snapped, voice rising for the first time. "Weak specimens had to be removed. No one cares about a few dying strays if it keeps the rest alive." The words came fast now, sharp and unguarded. Eli kept his face neutral, but inside he felt the recorder humming like a lifeline in his pocket. Jonas was giving him exactly what he needed. "You'll regret this," Jonas hissed. "You and your friends, Thorne, that wounded kid, they'll all pay." Before Jonas could move closer, headlights flared in the distance. Someone had followed Eli's signal. Marcus stepped from his truck, holding a camera instead of a weapon. Jonas froze, realization dawning too late. "You're finished," Eli said quietly. "Everything you just said is going to every news desk in the state." Jonas's calm cracked for the first time. His lips twisted into a snarl. "You think this ends me?" he spat. "Rydell isn't one man." The screech of tires broke the moment. Jonas spun on his heel, sprinted to his sedan, and roared away into the darkness. Eli didn't chase. He didn't have to. The recording in his pocket was already proof enough. By morning, the leak hit every major outlet. Audio of Jonas confessing to dumping animals and running illegal experiments spread through radio and television. State authorities swarmed Rydell facilities with search warrants, shutting down operations and hauling off records by the truckload. But Jonas himself had vanished. 2 days later, his sedan was found burned in an abandoned quarry outside town, no trace of its driver. The news called it a disappearance. Eli suspected it was something darker, either self-inflicted or arranged by Rydell to erase loose ends. Meanwhile, the bull, the living proof of everything, was moved under court order to a sanctuary in the next county. Crowds gathered at the gates, curious to see the animal that had survived both cruelty and fire. It stood behind high fences, scarred but strong, its strange endurance becoming a symbol for something bigger than Ridgeton. Eli refused every reward offered to him. "I'm no hero," he told Marcus and Tate one evening as they packed a few belongings into Tate's truck. "I just did what anyone should have done." Tate shook his head, wincing as he adjusted his healing arm. "Not everyone would risk their life for a bull," he said. Marcus lit a cigarette, looking uneasy. "Rydell's got allies we haven't seen yet. If Jonas is gone, someone else will step into his place. You two need to keep moving." The decision was easy. At dawn, Eli and Tate left Ridgeton quietly, taking back roads to avoid attention. As they passed the sanctuary where the bull now lived, they slowed for just a moment. Fresh tire tracks marked the dirt near the gate. Eli stared at them, his chest tightening. Someone else had been watching, someone who hadn't given up. The victory felt hollow, uneasy, as if a shadow lingered over everything they had done. Later that evening, Marcus returned home to find an unmarked envelope shoved under his door. No address, no signature. Inside was a single sheet of paper, 4 words scrawled in sharp, deliberate handwriting. It's not the last. The warning made it clear. There were more experiments, more creatures hidden in the shadows, and Eli's battle had only lit the first spark of a much larger fire. Disclaimer: the story you just watched is fictional. It explores themes of compassion, resilience, and the power of a single act of kindness. This narrative aims to highlight the value of every life, inspire empathy, and remind us that a true friend can be found in the most unlikely of places.